All right, guys, on this week's Land Beat, we're talking about CRP versus tillable. What does a recreational-minded landowner want on their property? Let's walk you through those scenarios this week. We're staying on a property, one of my favorite properties, honestly, to work and have enjoyed working with the landowner over the last 7-8 years as his management and mindset has shifted and changed greatly. Hopefully you can hear me okay, but there's a lot of ambient noise, and that is the sound and sights of the songbirds here in this CRP planting. This is not just a typical CRP planting, but a forb heavy planting. So the big conversation though is an evolution of the property. It's 136 acres of this property were tillable. And then, right, we had a big discussion with the landowner, talked about his goals and objectives, and had essentially talked about planting a CRP blend. And there's a lot of different CRPs, but particularly with this landowner's goal and the goal of many recreational landowners, like I'm talking to here today, is the goal of making this as wildlife friendly as possible. Sure, there's some objectives of income, retaining some income, screening purposes, but at the end of the day, what's more fruitful, what's more valuable for wildlife is going 136 acres into tillable versus this type of CRP with this heavy forb component and maybe a shorter grass component. So this particular CRP is heavy in forbs and has a lot of the little blue stem, and there's some switchgrass dotted throughout it, but on average, we're talking 4 to 6 foot tall on the grass coverage on an annual basis, and then forb component mixed into all this. Whereas some other CRPs maybe will get you that 6 to 7 foot tall. There, you're gonna see more of Indian grass, more switchgrass, and more big blue stem than the dominant little blue stem here. But what's important in the conversation is this landowner essentially, from a cost standpoint, each and every year that he's looking at it, is comparing the difference between $40 an acre, okay, of going straight tillable versus the CRP payments for this particular property, okay? So on average, every single year, that's a $4,000 difference. $4,000 to some people is enough to say, oh, I'm going straight tillable. For other people, it might be, that's not worth it to me to lose out on the value that this provides for wildlife. So everybody's situation is different, but there is a happy medium and blend that you can have with tillable and with CRP. Now for me, if you come to me or Land of Legacy and you say, I am wildlife minded, I want to do what I can for wildlife to make this just the mecca, to make it buzzing and birds chirping and brooding and nesting cover, as well as spawning cover. Like, you tell me that, well, we're gonna go this route, right? At the end of the day, $4,000 may not make a difference enough to you. And if so, welcome. This is what you're gonna get, right? We're gonna push into that ratio, a heavier ratio of a diverse planting within CRP. Because guess what? Just over this ridge and just over that ridge, we've got food plots. We still have allotted acres of food plots or areas on this farm that were not even put into CRP, right? So we can still have our cake and eat it too within this, but we don't have to give up really anything but $4,000 if you're just looking at a balance sheet or you're just looking at numbers. But the gain comes from not only the forage cover that's provided through this CRP, but also someone's gonna say, well, I don't like that CRP blend because it's too short. In reality, it's not that short when we have a little bit of roll and you're placing your food plots in the right places, okay? So this entire interior road, if we were to take it all the way to the property boundary, from the house to the property boundary, you're not exposed to any of those feeding areas, okay? This is where spatial arrangement and access all come together, and understanding some role in topography and knowing what this blend is going to achieve for the landowner, right? So initially in planning this all out, we said, okay, we have to have access to these blinds and stands, right? These given areas are where you're gonna harvest deer and turkeys on an annual basis. But will this suffice as a height and structure and screening purpose through the CRP program? And the answer is yes, right? When things are laid out appropriately. So every situation certainly can be different. Every scenario, right, we got to look at. Maybe you have a completely flat piece of ground, and we do 2 different types of enrollments in CRP. So we've got a screen and we got other stuff that's shorter. But regardless, is this option of CRP produces an income, and the only difference that it produces from the tillable, full tillable option is $4,000. But that ground on the tillable side of things sure does produce a lot of food in the growing season, but we have accomplished that in the food plot program here as well, okay? So that really is the only value that the tillable is providing, because most of the year, or I should say a lot of the year, 6, 7 months out of the year, those acres are idle. They're not producing cover. It's a harvested crop. And so it's barren, or there might be a little bit of spilled grain there. But if in the design and the goal of the property, you've got enough acres to plant standing grain, and or you've got perennial clovers or alfalfa food plots that are offsetting the browse pressure of your grain plots, and then the rest of the property is great, again, fawning cover, brooding cover, nesting cover for other species, then this is a win-win-win. So at the end of the day, yes, everybody in their situation and property is different. It's hard to encapsulate, right, that this is the only direction or way to go. However, this was a great decision for this landowner at the time that he made the decision, and now and into the future. This has checked all the boxes for him and his stated goals. It may not be for everybody, and it doesn't mean that you have to forego, again, all the tillable. But at that standpoint, now we're only talking about $1,000, $2,000 difference potentially in this whole property and that income balance scenario. And it may become, in the situation, as you start to dial back the amount of tillable acres on a property, the harder it may be to find a farmer who's willing to take on those acres as well. So again, so many variables and situations to consider and ponder. But if you're coming to talk about the balance of tillable and the balance of food and cover that can be offered on a property to land legacy, and you are goal-oriented to recreation, this is the direction that we're going to send you. Look at the amount of forbs, the amount of structure, the amount of cover that this does provide. Deer bed in this all the time. I mean, this is 4.5 foot tall. If a deer bed's down on the ground, their head's coming up to here. 2/3 of this is above it. Like, this is plenty enough cover. And with edge feathering around the edges, this is tremendous opportunity for deer, adult deer, not just fawns. But you have to consider the entire situation, entire scenario, the role of topography, the amount of acres left in food plots, the type of food plots that you're doing, the realization that these broadleaf plants are food, and it's not just complete grass, right, as some of the heavy grass CRP options are, or it's not just crops for only a short amount of time frame that is food. So I threw a lot at you, a lot of different scenarios to consider, but I want you to consider the value of native forage, native forbs, and it's not always the tall CRP. The big 3, the Indian grass, little blue stem, switchgrass, that is going to provide the best for wildlife. Really want people to consider this as their option for CRP, and consideration of this is food, this is cover, 365.